what the article talks about. It also says that female participation, enrollment in education has been shot up by 28% in just the last 1 decade. Again, that's amazing. Talking about the science, tech, engineering, math education, women now are 43% segment of that. Is it something to be very happy about? Yes. But it comes with another underbelly. There is a hidden aspect to it, and the hidden problem is that although 43% of women are in the STEM work, in the STEM education field, there is just about 18% of them who are actually working. They have taken the STEM education, but the ones who are actually employed in the formal sector are just 18%. So look at the gap. What is this gap called? It's known as the workforce dropout. In India, so many women, despite taking higher education, are victims of workforce dropouts. In fact, when we talk about the workforce dropout, immediately our mind should focus on the Gati scheme of the government. Apart from that, the Kiran scheme of the Indian government, both the initiatives taken by the Department of Science and Technology. Why? To make sure that Indian women are encouraged to participate in PhD programs in India and abroad through government scholarships, those who are workforce dropouts. Plus, Kiran comes with an additional element of encouraging young girls from rural areas to take up science education. Now recently, in fact yesterday, the government has introduced another scheme called Swati. Swati is an online portal. It's a consolidated portal which will contain the data of all Indian women who are engaged in the formal sector. Once again, that will be a good eye-opener about where is the gap and how much of it is existing. Now on that note, even in rural India, if we see, about 9 crore women today are engaged in the self-help group. Talking about self-help group, yes, we immediately are reminded about the National Rural Livelihood Mission and the National Urban Livelihood Mission. Now both these were created with one agenda. The agenda of creating self-help groups as small, informal groups of people, poor people in urban and rural India who will come together, who will pool in their resources and start doing some self-employment venture, anything. Very good examples could be Lijjat Papad in India, a very successful women-led initiative. Seva 1972, the first of its own kind self-help group in India, the Kutumbasri in Kerala. All these are examples of how rural women are now willingly coming and taking up self-help group activities. This in turn also encourages microfinance. So with microfinance, they can emerge as big entrepreneurs in times to come. Because once again in India, another major problem is that very low entrepreneurship skills are available for women. Many reasons are there. One of the biggest reasons is low credit absorption capacity. We shall elaborate it on some other segment probably, but it just means that women are not able to finance their own ventures. One is they do not get loans that easily. Another thing is poor market linkage. So here through self-help group and microfinancing, these things are taken care of. So therefore all these developments will eventually ensure how India becomes by 2047, as per the Indian government, a society where women are equal contributors in the workforce. Now, another interesting initiative is We Led Lounge. This was created by the Ministry of Women and Child Development recently, and it was announced in Davos. What's the agenda? The agenda is to create a system, a panel, where now more women will be encouraged to take up leadership roles across various corporate organizations. At the same time, we are talking about how to promote women in agrotech, agriculture technology, about skill development. Now remember, even 10% funds were reserved in the Startup India Mission 2015, in the Skill India initiative. But how much of it was actually utilized by women? But that was a grey area which all these schemes are trying to focus upon. So just because India today is trying to focus not only on encouraging women in rural areas by making the rural women more techno-friendly, we are teaching them technology skills. Plus, we are focusing on women entrepreneurs. We are focusing on STEM education. We are promoting women reservation in parliament. We are promoting corporate women. So therefore, India has been labeled rightly as the pharmacy of the world. Because now India is not focusing on one, but multi-sectoral women development. And on that note, let's move to the third article for your mains. This is page number 7, again GS paper 2, but relevant to Indian polity. In fact, In general, it's relevant to global polity. The article talks about, is the process of democracy across the globe today fair and transparent? Why? The issue has come into light because 2024, as per this article, is going to be one remarkable event, a remarkable phenomenal year, because a lot of people across the world are going to give their votes. Many countries across the globe are experiencing or have been experiencing electoral process. So therefore, the voter turnout is tremendous. What explains this sudden boom of voter turnout? As per the article, there are a couple of factors. One biggest factor is an increase in general global population. Specifically, in the developing countries, there is an increase of demographic dividend again. So, demographic dividend is that bracket or that segment of our population which is typically between 15 to 49 years. It's young. It is a big contributor in economic progress. And since most of these people are in the age group of electorate, they are ready to give votes, we can explain the sudden shoot up in the rate of voter base across nations. Another reason is better gender awareness. So many more women across the world are now participating in the electoral process. Now remember, just a week back when Pakistan was going through this ongoing skirmish about who has won the election. Is it Mr. Nawaz Sharif or is it Mr. Imran Khan? One sitting in the prison claiming to have won the election, the other announcing his major victory. So in this scuffle, we do remember that newspapers were highlighting how women were prevented from giving their votes. They were not allowed to participate. So these are also certain realities of conservative societies across the world. But overall, if you see, gender participation, specifically in India, if we talk about it, has shot up tremendously. Third important reason could be general situation of geopolitical unrest. Now, whether you talk about Russia-Ukraine ongoing conflict, whether you talk about Iran-Pakistan scuffle, whether you talk about the West African nations, the constant military coups that are going on, or whether you talk about the Yemen, the Houthi episode, or whether you talk about how US is becoming involved because of the Houthi attacks constantly, or the Israel-Palestine, or whether you talk about the more or less cold, hot war that's going on in the Indian subcontinent region with reference to China or the South China Sea. The world is in a very difficult geopolitical situation right now. In that light, many more people are getting awareness, and this awareness towards restoring peaceful democracy has also encouraged many more people to come and begin thinking of giving their votes. So as per the article, these broader three reasons are responsible for the fact that now lots and lots of people will come and give their votes. In fact, the article says over 50 countries in which about 45% of the global population is living will be voting this year. So 2024 is going to be a historical year. Most of the elections are going to be held in developed countries, which claim to be more peaceful when you talk about the internal security situation, whether it's most countries of Asia, Europe, North America. Now, yesterday we heard about the Finland election. That was an example of how most of the countries right now are in the process of building new political base. And on that note, let's also remember that certain countries of Africa, South America are also now contemplating an electoral process to be happening in 2024 itself. So the article asks you a question, that if these many people are giving their votes this year, what is the situation of democratic process in general? Is it peaceful, transparent? Or is it marred by crimes? Is it marred by unrest? Is it marred by unfair means? That's the essence of this article. Now do remember, whenever we read any article here in the newspaper, it's all about trying to understand the main purpose, the main intent or the core of the article, and then there are many secondary facts that are revolving around it. So if you talk about the core of the article, it is the electoral process across the globe at a time when so many people are ready to give votes fair enough? And on that note, we are talking about a unique initiative mentioned in the article, and this is known as the 2022 VDEM Institute Index. The index has been created, it is known as Free and Fair Election Index. It is trying to rate different countries from a scale of 0 to 1. So, 1 being perfect, a perfect, transparent, democratic electoral process. 0 being the worst, where elections are not fair and they are marked by extensive corruption, fear mongering by political leaders, vote buying. Now, tacitly, although the article doesn't mention it clearly, but tacitly we could also here think about India. And we could refer to the vote bank politics, the caste and the religion-based politics that is a rampant part of Indian electoral process also. But the article definitely is not directly going in that direction. The article says, therefore, if the elections are irregular, the country is at the lowest. If they are very fair and good, it is actually on scale 1. So this is the depiction of the index here. And according to the index right now, there are countries like Comoros Islands, Hungary, Bangladesh, Poland, which are faring very lowly. The level of transparency and election honesty or the fairness in election is very, very poor. So which means these are marred by constant conflicts. Now, what is happening in Pakistan is not hidden from anybody. What's happening in Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, West African countries, the recent controversy regarding the ECOWAS is again out in the open. So in such countries, you cannot expect that election process is going to be transparent and fair. Most of these countries, as we refer to the ECOWAS, West Africa, were marred by political military coups, which means military unrest, a forceful taking of power, dictatorship. Talking about Pakistan, it was an election, but we know that there is barely any transparency that they are talking about. So these are the countries which have scored very poorly. And talking about India, in fact, most countries of Asia are somewhere in between. India is here. Similarly, Cambodia, Indonesia are right here. Pakistan is here. So different countries have a different ranking. Specifically for India, they are in the lower half, but somewhere in the middle. Now, talking about certain countries of Asian origin, such as Mongolia, Uzbekistan, Cambodia, they are also pretty low. Let's talk about India. India is in the middle somewhere with a score of 0.53. So talking about Indian scenario, in India, there has been a 6% increase in the number of people who will give their votes in 2024 as compared to the base year 2019 when the last election was held. India is a specific case example of how a burgeoning, a very young population growth leads to a better electoral base. But there is a paradox here. A lot of people might also ask that if the desired replacement level fertility rate across the globe is 2.1, India has already achieved 2.0. Then how come we constantly say that Indian population is swelling, it is increasing? Remember, just like our culture, even in India, the demographic profile is not uniform. Different states have a very different level of fertility. Talking about certain states such as Bihar, Uttarakhand, Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, you can say that the fertility rate is still on the higher side. It's much more than the RLF, the replacement level fertility, that's perfect 2.1. It is sometimes as high as 2.6, 2.7. Talking about certain other states, particularly the peninsular Indian states and the northeastern states, the fertility is as low as 1.5. So in that case, it is not uniform at all. So this explains why India does have a good, young, thriving population, but it is not uniformly spread across India. In fact, it is variable. So that explains the sudden shoot up of voter base also, the increase of young population overall, better awareness. Social media, that also is majorly responsible for creating the awareness regarding the right to vote. So we can say that about 96.88 registered voters exist in India right now. That's a huge number. As I said, one very big reason could be better women participation. So the gender ratio also has shot up from 940 in 2023 to 948 in 2024. Again, a very positive development. According to India's Election Commission data, it says that gender ratio has improved so positively that role of women in shaping political decisions, in political participation has tremendously gone up. And apart from that, 2.63 crore new electors or new voters have been included in the electoral roll in India, out of which 1.41 crore are just female voters. So you can see what a delightful development it is that not only overall are we talking about a more participative democracy, we're also talking about a very gender participative and parity oriented democracy here. So that's broadly what the article spoke about. And also, quickly before we move on, the article also mentions how certain countries, for example, we mentioned West African nations, which are experiencing a high degree of military violence. So there, there is no certainty of any transparency in democracy. In fact, although they are announcing that they will have elections in 2024, but there is yet no clarity about how would that be. And even if it does happen, how transparent and how corruption-free that would be is a point in concern. So at this, we will now proceed towards analyzing quickly our prelims bites, which are short, quick, fact-based. The first is from page number 12, The Hindu, New Delhi edition again, relevant to your GS3 Environment Biodiversity. It says how the Indian government has announced, it has in fact expressed its unhappiness that there was a decision it had announced back in 2023, but various states have not taken any action on it. And that is a regret that the central government has expressed. So we are talking about a very new system of rating, a new system of rating hospitality industry. Now do remember, India is one of those countries which has massive potential for ecotourism, religious tourism, massive potential for both. But at the same time, if hospitality like hotels, homestays, they are increasing in numbers so much, in fact they are becoming a major segment of economy today, food industry, entertainment industry, if their contribution in the overall GDP is increasing year after another, specifically after 2000, then why are they not held responsible for flouting environment norms? Just 10 days before, the Supreme Court had also done something similar. It was unhappy with how the government, the central government, was not taking a consolidated step to promote eco-friendly practices across various industries. Similar news is coming to light now. The government says that back in 2023 November, the government had launched a scheme known as Swachhata Green Leaf Rating. It meant that all units of hospitality industry, from hotels to homestays to dharmashalas to elaborate motels, highway-based accommodations, all of them were supposed to actually give a data. They were supposed to clarify how carbon neutral practices are they following. Are they following sustainable sanitation? Are they discouraging the use of polythene and plastic from their premises? Are they abandoning the use of single-use plastics? Are they practicing something as fundamental as segregation of waste at source, which is already mandated in most Indian metropolitans right now, where you cannot dump your waste, your domestic household waste together. You have to segregate it between organic, dry inorganic and medical insanitary waste, all of them. So are these people doing it? Yes or no? Because if they are not doing it, it was high time the government should have taken an action. State governments had not done enough. So it says that across various sectors, whether you talk about drinking water, sustainable sanitation, as we said, segregation of waste, proper waste disposal practices, are these being done? So the government says that they are not being done enough. And this scheme, Swachhata Green Leaf Rating, was an index to rate various hospitality units in terms of how well are they performing for eco-friendly function. So here, this was basically a joint collaboration between Tourism Ministry as well as the Department of Drinking Water and Sanitation. Now, except for Jammu and Kashmir, where it was implemented in a pilot mode, other states have not been doing enough. So that's what the initiative talks about. The government has also said that this is nothing but just another extension of the Swachh Bharat Mission Gramin, something that was launched as early as 2015, which spoke about 2-3 things: Swachhata Pakhwada, intensive hygiene mission, banning manual scavenging, abandoning the use of dry toilets, as well as encouraging better fecal sludge management. So not enough has been done. So that's what the government says, that strictly the states should adopt good practices. But what are good practices? So good practices are about healthy fecal sludge management, which means you need to dispose your waste properly. It has to be segregated from the clean water. Plus, it has to be done in such a sustainable way that the water that is cleaned from fecal sludge can be reutilized into agriculture and farming. That's again to save water. Apart from that, solid waste collection at source, segregation at source, promoting alternatives, healthy alternatives to single-use plastics and all of that. So therefore, this rating system will give a positional index to various hotels and restaurants across the country about how carbon neutral are they trying to be. Once again, in the light of India's commitment to achieve the SDGs towards cleaner, better climate. So not only homestays, hotels, lodges, but also restaurants, dharmashalas will all be included here. The objective is to prevent dumping of solid waste in water. The objective is to abandon plastic. The objective is to make sure that there is no kind of drainage of solid waste into pipes or into canals or local drains. All of these. For this, a 3-tier committee shall be created, which shall together work in coordination, beginning with a verification subcommittee formed under the SDM, the sub-divisional magistrate, which shall be then followed by district committee, to be followed by state level committee under the chief secretary of the state. So that shall be the hierarchical structure of the functioning, and the government strongly wants this scheme to be implemented. With this, a page number 1 news is again important for prelims, and this is pertaining to economy. We are talking about the retail inflation in India. As a respite to the consumers, business houses across the country, after a huge spike from 2023 November, December to now January and into February, the retail inflation rate has suddenly come down. It has eased now, and it has come to a 3-month low of barely 5.1%. This is the good news, because whenever we talk about retail inflation, we are talking about the consumer price index, the CPI, because it is the CPI as per the Reserve Bank of India's mandate back in 2014-15 that the consumer price index will be used to measure the retail inflation in India, because it is this measure that captures the average fluctuation in the prices of basket of goods and services that are utilized by an average customer. So if the retail inflation shoots up, the per unit currency price which an average consumer pays to buy goods and services becomes too much. So therefore it means more spending, lesser purchasing power, lesser saving, lesser investment. Overall, it leads to more sluggish consumption in the economy. Similarly, at the same time, the government also says that we cannot use the wholesale price index when it comes to measuring the retail inflation, because wholesale price index does not include services. In fact, it is only an estimation of the increase in the prices of wholesale goods that are dealt with at a commercial level but not at individual consumer level. So here, as the inflation, retail inflation particularly, has dropped down, it could mean that consumers will have better consumption expenditure, their purchasing power will shoot up, which would also mean better saving, a better investment across various financial instruments, and overall it could mean wonders to give stability to the ongoing rate of economic growth. It will give stability to the food prices. So again, it's very interrelated. Now this recent development of retail inflation coming down is also responsible, it has been responsible because of the general ease in the prices of cereals, in the prices of food production, in the prices of fuel. So it is all a very interdependent chain. Whenever the supply chain logistics shoot up, it automatically results in a higher retail inflation. It's quite directly related to that. So here it comes as a good news that after a long big struggle with very high consumption, very high food prices, the consumers can now be at ease, and it is manifesting in the form of much cheaper services. You can talk about education, healthcare, entertainment, hospitality, medical. You can talk about basic consumption goods and services, your food basket. All of that will show a tremendous difference. And with this, now we can also proceed on one more fact about this article. It also says that in 22 major states and union territories of India, the inflation rate is also very, very heterogeneous. It's not very uniform. Say, for example, in certain states, the inflation rate is 5.10% and above, even in January, whereas in certain states, it's much lower than that. For example, Odisha right now tops the list, to be followed by Telangana, both of which have way more than 5%. But for other states, it is much more settled as of now. So, as we already discussed about the CPI, the index that measures the retail inflation in the country as such, by just analyzing the change in prices of commonly consumed goods and services. So now with this, we can proceed with our last prelims bite for the day. This is GS Paper 3 Science and Technology segment, and this comes as a very interesting discovery. But to understand this, we need to first understand the concept of Event Horizon Telescope. What is the Event Horizon Telescope. Now this is not a single telescope. It is a set of integrated telescopes across the world. What does it do? Back in 2019, it made a very interesting discovery that had never been happened before. It released an image of black hole, not only proving its existence, but also explaining its various dynamics. This opened a new chapter in the foray of research in the black hole segment. It is a matter of great intrigue to astronomers all along. It has been that way. So now, once the Event Horizon Telescope discovered and proved the existence of the black hole, it also said that black hole seems to be an area of collapsed mass. Now something that has much bigger, you can say, size as compared to a sun. Ideally it should have a mass that is way more than sun, many suns together. But the area that it is occupying is so minimal. So what happens as a result? It is extremely heavy in gravity. If the gravity is too high, nothing, not even light, can escape from here. In fact, if at all, any object is to cross the periphery of a black hole and fall into it, immediately spiraling effect happens. Spiraling effect because the core, the center of the black hole is the area of unimaginably high gravity, which then suddenly decreases unit by unit as you come towards outside. So in this reference, in the light of this study, recently, in fact yesterday, the Event Horizon Telescope has proven one more thing. It says that not only does the black hole exist, but also they have discovered that this black hole also has a huge periphery which can be called as the shadow of the black hole. What is this periphery and how come they have observed this shadow? So what they are trying to say here, that if the black hole has a tremendous gravity into it, what happens is that when light also reaches here, we know that it cannot escape. But due to intense gravity, the light just starts scattering at the periphery of the black hole. Because of the scattering of light, it just gets divided into two dimensions. This in fact is also referred to as the phenomena of lensing that astronomers have observed around the black hole. And now what is happening? Just like the light is constantly experiencing a kind of deviation, a kind of sudden elliptical movement across the black hole, the problem that's happening is that it creates an uncertain band around black hole. And this has been attributed as the shiny shadow of the black hole, as the images here are portraying. Now also people are saying that this could be very deeply related to the phenomena of space-time. Now according to this phenomena, which is a very popular physical theory, it says that if the mass or the gravity of an object is too much, if it is too heavy, what happens is that the entire space and time will curve around that. So something similar is happening with the black hole also. They curve around the black hole. Because of immense gravity, they are pulled and they start curving in the direction of the space-time around black hole. Because of this, the light also curves. This creates the image of a shadow, as I said, which is also referred to as lensing. So the astronomers are saying that this also could be a major discovery further in the field of the space-time theory. And with this, just like the Event Horizon Telescope had confirmed the presence of a black hole, today it is also saying that the general theory of relativity of light, it is strongly linked. It is strongly related to the theory of curving space-time and the curving of light. Hence, a very critical development. And further, it shall be investigated as to what other dynamics does the black hole mystery entail. And on that note, we can quickly analyze two important questions for your mains. The first question here is associated with the article on global gender parity. It's a 20 marks question. It says, what is the Alliance for Global Good? Pretty direct. We just discussed how India has created this back in its G20 presidency. And the question also says, explain it in the context of India's commitment towards achieving multi-sectoral gender parity. Remember, we just said that India is the pharmacy of the world. It has every solution in every direction to solve the problem of gender lack of empowerment. So therefore, it is a multi-sectoral initiative taken by India. You can speak about the New Delhi Declaration on Women Empowerment. Besides, the question says, illustrate When we use words like illustrate, substantiate, justify, we must give examples, and it says what are some important initiatives which the government has adopted in this background. So what are these initiatives? You can talk about the Women Reservation Bill to promote the substantive representation. You can speak about the Mission Shakti as we refer to. You can speak about the Kiran scheme, Gati scheme, or the Swati portal. You can also talk about how improvements are already happening in terms of STEM education, in terms of better female labor force participation, and that's what you need to do. The second question here is coming from the ecology segment, GSP P3, as we discussed, that hospitality sector could revolutionize, it could completely change India's fight towards better climate management practices and sustainable sanitation, so you need to discuss and elaborate that. Indeed, today the government has decided to focus on the hospitality sector as we discussed, hotels, industries, homestays and other such accommodation facilities. Why? Because if they are a rising segment of India's economy, if they contribute a seizable amount to the GDP, it should be their responsibility to go carbon neutral very soon. In that light, we are talking about the Swachh Bharat Green Leaf Index, where the government is encouraging these people to take up sustainable sanitation practices. And you can talk about everything that we said, from fecal sludge management to segregation at source, to proper disposal of solid waste, to make sure that the index is encouraged and implemented by the various state governments, just like it has happened in Jammu Kashmir. It can make a huge difference by not only changing consumer behavior, but also it can definitely make a lasting impact on India's mission to reduce its carbon footprint. And now on that note, I take your leave with this session. Thank you so much for being a part of today's session, and do try to attempt the questions.